Yeah, please.
Okay, so if everyone has the reading there, let me go down. So we're doing the reading Feelings, April 10th. Our society loves to devalue anything that is related to emotions, feelings, and mental health in general. If we let our guard down and share our true thoughts, we're usually told, "You're too sensitive. Why are you so emotional? You're overreacting. Just toughen up and get over it." This tendency to minimize our feelings leads us to absorb the message that maybe we really are too sensitive. Maybe our feelings really don't matter that much, and maybe we really should just toughen up. As a consequence, and depending on other factors such as your upbringing, you eventually start to believe that you're the crazy one that feels too much, and you'd be better off if you stopped caring about your own needs. So you invalidate your feelings and you ruin your self-esteem, which is the perfect foundation for people-pleasing behavior since you have no sense of self. Although these unspoken social norms are normalized between us, they're extremely toxic, and in fact, they can be considered a form of social gaslighting. We ridicule, deny, and silence our own perceptions in order to adapt and survive. People pleasers start off as parent pleasers. The root cause of being a people pleaser usually has to do with your early stages in life, specifically the way you were treated, loved, and cared for by your parents or primary caregivers. Yes, I know this is a hard pill to swallow. If, as a child, your parents only showed love when you were conforming to their needs, desires, and expectations, you'll eventually learn that you need to please them in order to be truly loved and accepted, and you'll unconsciously apply that belief to every human interaction. This is not something easy to acknowledge because we usually think about our parents as people we love and share a close bond with. However, there's something important to have in mind. Just because their parenting style has left some psychological scars on you, it doesn't mean they're bad people. It just means they were operating from their own level of awareness. This kind of parenting can stem from mental illness, addiction, their own upbringing, or just bad life circumstances. More often than not, parents who behave this way can also be warm, kind, and loving at times, which can be extremely confusing. This inconsistency affects your emotional well-being in a very deep way. Children pick up on everything. If parents don't show love in a stable, consistent way, children end up absorbing the message that they need to prove themselves in order to receive love again.
It's long, but it's an important reading
Mm.
uh, because it really speaks to the core of codependency is that we don't know our feelings. We learn not to honor our feelings or the energy or the intuition, our sensory parts of us, which are our feelings, and it it allows us to continue to get hurt because without our feelings, which are safety and security mechanisms, we're going to continue repeating very difficult patterns that are hurtful and harmful. So anyway, anybody want to speak to it because it's kind of long, but it's got a lot of important messages in it.
Mm. Yeah, there's a lot in this reading, Janice.
Yeah, we could break it into two,
Yeah, like the first part,
right?
um, oh my God, it really resonated with me. Um, about, oh, you're too sensitive, you're too emotional, you're overreacting. I've had all of those things. And just toughen up and get over it. That was like definitely a major lesson, or thing I was told, as a young person. Um, and it makes total sense to me, like how I learned to minimize my own feelings.
Or not have them,
Yeah.
devalue them.
Yeah, or like, yeah, exactly.
Did anybody else struggle with any of this? I'm gonna guess yes. Yeah, you know, it's see, if you look at codependency as an umbrella and what's under that umbrella are all these roots that go deep inside of us, and the lack of feeling, the lack of being able to nurture our feelings, know our feelings, experience our feelings. I mean, we devalue us. That is, we are the feelings, that is our messengers. Does that make sense, you guys?
Yeah, yeah, it does.
You know? So who felt that they were too sensitive or too emotional?
Oh, I definitely, uh, in my marriage, I mean, for sure, I was always, I would get teased or belittled and then have an emotional response. And it was like, you're too sensitive, because there was a breaking in the line of the respect for me as a person and not only a wife, so it was like, being devalued uh, for someone else's entertainment. And that was a little tricky. It was a little tricky. Um, yeah, constant, and I think it's super important. I've noticed for myself is in this crazy world we live in is we have to be very careful about who we surround ourselves with and who can support our truth, um, versus those who you can't share your truth with because you will be labeled sensitive or crazy or something like that. And I think that's huge. And I think as you grow, or as I've grown, I know which people are safe to share my crazy with, which really isn't crazy, because it's my truth, right? I don't know if that made any sense.
Yeah.
I just talk and it comes out of my
No, you always make sense. Well, I feel like you learned to, whether you recognize it or not, learn to devalue your feelings and yourself when you were small. So
yeah.
when you got into the relationship, it felt very familiar to feel devalued and your feelings to be demeaned or ridiculed even. 'Cause- Go ahead.
Yeah, I had this kind of awareness today, or it was shared with me that you know possibly my father was very critical of women in general, and he didn't maybe directly mean that wasn't maybe directed at my mom or me. There's a possibility, but it's what I heard. And therefore, that's what I took on subconsciously, unconsciously, whatever, as I don't have any worth because of the comments he would make or things like that. And yeah, so definitely some childhood programming and then some midlife programming. And I'm just deprogramming now.
You're starting to value yourself,
Yeah.
and that's a really critical part to the healing is to recognize the culture itself devalues
Yeah.
emotions, so and feelings. So it perpetuates the hurt, the suffering, the struggle because those feelings are what are important to us to feel safe and secure. So the thing that works for us, we're told not to even experience, or that we're being a baby, or we're being too emotional, or we're being too reactive. Especially women get that a lot, when we're little. If we have feelings, we get dismissed, or certainly not acknowledged in a kind way about them. I'd like to hear from, if you guys are willing, some others, like, how did that happen in your childhood? Or are you willing to share, the process that occurred with you?
I can relate with that. Sorry, I'm having a little bit of like bad like feedback for some reason, so it keeps cutting out. But I could relate with, yeah, I mean, I was always told that like if I cried, stop being a baby, or I'll give you something to cry about, or I'm being dramatic, or really just it feels like anything that I would bring up was really dismissed, um, which I feel like obviously has really carried over into my adult life, and I've been trying to work on it. And one thing, like I think Michelle was saying, is about like who earns that, to be able to like get that vulnerability out and like talk to them about the feelings, because they were, for my feelings, they were so dismissed on a regular basis that working on getting vulnerable and expressing my feelings is like it's a really challenging thing sometimes. And I'm learning that I don't need to do that with everybody. Even if somebody is in my life, like my co-parenting, I don't need to like get that vulnerable and share all my feelings with them if I'm gonna be like met with judgment and not met with like some type of empathy and understanding of like my feelings and like how I'm expressing them so that that person would know. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I like that, Sarah. It's like, first off, our feelings are for us. First off, first and foremost, it's like, what are they sharing? What are they telling us, and how valuable they are for us? And then to share it with somebody else. I agree with Michelle. I'm very selective as to what I share. I don't just share everything with just anybody, whatever I'm feeling. You know, I'm I I'm selective, I'm discerning, and it doesn't mean that I don't share my feelings, but first I have them for myself and realize what I'm trying to commune or communicate. And then I do it according to whoever that person is, not just how I'm feeling. Does that make sense? I'm very careful and cautious. Um, and not defensive, but protective, because they're very important. Look what's happened to us all the time since we were little. They were devalued and judged and ridiculed. So just because we have them and we understand them doesn't mean necessarily somebody else is going to hold them with honor or respect. you know does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Big lesson of mine this week.
Well, it's a big lesson for all of us, because we finally start having feelings, then we want to share them, and then they get shut down, if we're not careful with who we share them with or how we share them. And just because you're having them, that's the most important thing first and prime, foremost. It's like, they're ours, they're precious. They're like little precious things that are ours alone, and then you can share them if you choose to. Does that make sense, you guys? Hi, Megan. I love seeing you like that. I want to crawl in bed.
I'll jump in about feelings. I think all of us on here have probably similar upbringings in that regard. Like we were kind of told not to feel our feelings. You're supposed to be happy. You're supposed to be good. So it was that generation. And that's my role now in my recovery, is to not do that to my children, and to allow them to have their feelings. And like, even I just noticed so much when my mom or my dad's around of how they talk to my kids and treat my kids. And it's like, no, she's allowed to have big feelings. She's 7, and because I wasn't allowed to. I was okay, seen, not heard, that kind of childhood. And that didn't end so well for me. Got some issues from that. So I think just rewiring how I am as a mother, so I don't do that to my children, of how the feelings, it's just like, I'm in big feelings right now, and I'm actually able to pinpoint them for the first time in my life instead of just run from them. Because when you feel them, I literally, Janice, you know all too well, when I started to see her, it was like I had to get a feelings list because I didn't know what feelings were. Like, it was happy or sad. It was depressed or like elated. It was ends of the spectrum, not the middle where the joy is and where the calm is and the good is, and feeling the feelings that I'm in grief right now. I'm in so many, but like I can sit in it and I don't have to run from them. And just that was a great reading. I actually copied and pasted it when I was on my phone to a couple friends of mine. Good stuff. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, because just being able to say and experience your feelings is the beginning of healing. Without that, there really isn't going to be healing. There isn't. You have to know and trust your feelings and honor them, because so many of us only want good feelings or judge our feelings as good and bad. And they're all equal. They're all amazing. They're all so important. And don't judge them, because let's say it's sadness. Well, sadness has a purpose. It has a lesson. It has telling us something that we need, or grief or joy or elation. They're all like a symphony, they're all important parts of us. Does that make sense, you guys? Because so many of us judge our feelings, don't know what they are, only feel overwhelmed, and then don't want to feel because we don't know what to do with overwhelm, right? So that's why I like this reading, because it's part of the healing process. It's like boundaries from last week and then feelings this week. It's like the boundaries are also a way to protect ourselves and our feelings. And just imagine and hold this, that the more you feel, the more people will experience you differently. You don't have to let them know always what you're feeling. They will experience you differently, because you know your feelings and you're processing differently. You show up differently. Your energy's different. Does that make sense, you guys? Yeah, it's really important. What do you think, Kate? You're shaking your head.
I'm just jotting some stuff down. At first, when I read what we were gonna chat about today, I was like, well, I can't relate. But I guess as I'm thinking about it more and hearing people share, I know that I was like, who said it? Was it? I don't know if it was Sarah or Megan or Cindy. I'm not sure. But anyway, it was what was it, be seen not heard or something like that. But anyway, yeah, my family never showed emotion or spoke about our feelings at all. And we were taught as young girls, my sister and I, to say by my nana, um if someone asks you how you're doing, say, fine, thank you, how are you? And it always bothered me, and I never really understood why. I thought maybe it sounded, I don't know, it was too formal. But I mean, I didn't understand also why I was supposed to just react or you know, use the word fine when, first of all, I fucking hate that word. Excuse my language. And I've gotten a definition from Janice, what I can't remember right now, but fine is so neutral. It doesn't mean anything to me. And I'm like, so basically you're telling me to lie to them and pretend everything's just dandy and you know, respond in this formal way. Anyway, so that was my family, probably like many. So fine, thank you. How are you? And I'm thinking now that um as folks have spoke, I'm also learning how to like what feelings are and um feeling I'm trying to find myself, guys, so I don't know, it's very confusing, but I know that I'm afraid to share my feelings, my intimate feelings. Like I'm okay with being like I'm pissed off at that electrician because he screwed me on this or that, or you know, and I'm hurt because of it or whatever, and I won't use those words, but to actually talk about how I feel exposes me. And so I don't think I do it so well. As much as I try to be honest with friends I have and everything, maybe I'm not sharing some of the intimate feelings. So anyway, I I think this is interesting, and I'm hoping to hear from others on how, you know, what their thoughts on the topics that we're going through, and so I can learn a little bit.
I appreciate that, Kate, because what we're talking about is not simple, okay? Because there's no like formula, there's no book. It's like, here, I'm gonna get this book and read about feelings. It's literally, and maybe we can do an exercise. Well, let's just let everybody share first, but it's like feelings are little sensations in us just waving at us saying, hey, I need attention. Okay, that's all they are. And because they're usually don't scream, sometimes they become overwhelmed because we don't hear them when they're less loud, because we don't know the sensations because we're not in our body. Do you know what I'm saying? We're in our heads, and sensations and feelings are in our body. They're like a little wave that says, ooh, something's going on, you know, attend to me. And it's not hard, but it takes practice to start pausing and recognizing checking in, my favorite word, pause, checking in on yourself and what's really going on in here. Checking in with yourself. What are the sensations? Are you having sensations? What are they? What is your body telling you? Because your body responds to every feeling, you know, and it just does. And if we're not in tune to our bodies, we're not going to know what we're feeling. Do you see that? It's like we're in our heads trying to figure out what we're feeling. It's like, doesn't work there. You can't figure out what you're feeling in your head. Just the opposite, in fact. What do you think, Cindy?
There we go. I was just trying to put some thoughts together. I kind of just made a connection for myself that because I have been really disconnected from my capital S self for a long time, and I'm now reconnecting on a wonderful healing journey. But because I have been so disconnected from myself, which also means I've been very disconnected from my body, then of course that also means that I have really been disconnected from feelings. And you know, to tie it in with last week, you know, the boundaries, it's almost like in order for me to know what boundaries I want to set, or let's just say like in the moment, if something is said to me or something like that, and I would want to set a boundary, I'm and maybe it's something that was hurtful, something you said that was, I don't know, hurtful or whatever. In that moment, I actually can't get like yet a boundary statement like out of my mouth in that moment, because all of a sudden I actually my body has some sort of like freeze reaction. My mind does. And so it's difficult for me to even be in touch with what the feeling is in that moment. Therefore, if I can't recognize the feeling, if I'm just overwhelmed with um, I'm just overwhelmed with the experience or whatever,
Right.
with the triggering or with that with the stimulus or whatever, then I'm not even in the headspace to be able to formulate my words to come out with a boundary.
Mhm.
And so that's what I was kind of putting together for me. Um, and I mean, therapy is really huge for me, and so I know that this is a longer process for me. But yeah, so that's the connection I just made.
Yeah, I like that, and I appreciate that, Cindy, because I think a lot of us, because we don't know when they're down here, meaning the feelings just starting and subtle. See, feelings don't pause. Okay, they don't pause. We pause, but they get louder because they're trying to tell us something. Okay, and then we ignore them. And then they get louder. Okay, like you're starting to feel overwhelmed, right?
Mhm.
And you don't know what to do. None of us do, because we're used to feeling overwhelmed and running away from that because we hate it. Instead of pausing even at overwhelm, and how do you go back down and see what really is going on? That's like harder. I'm just going to say it. I don't usually use that word, but it's more difficult because when we're overwhelmed, we're offline.
Mhm.
Okay, we're offline. We just are. And our body is like pulsing, you know.
Mhm.
We're like
Mhm.
in a electric storm. And ultimately, and this is a little bit, it's a beginning anyway. So when you're feeling that overwhelm, if you can still pause for a second and recognize what's the overwhelming feeling, not just overwhelmed. Does that
Mm.
make sense a little bit? Like, what is the
Yeah.
overwhelming feeling,
Yeah.
which can give you some kind of a signal that what you need to de-escalate and regulate? Because let's say it's fear. Let's just say you're in a state of fear, but you don't know it because you're overwhelmed and your head's spiraling. If you can pause and say, wow, what's the overwhelming feeling? And you might at least begin to say, it's fear. I'm scared. I'm scaring myself. So that's a beginning. Do you see, as a tool? Because overwhelm just feels overwhelming. There's no clues.
And it sort of brings me into like that freeze
Yeah.
sort of state.
Right. And ultimately, which practice takes, you start feeling it way before you're overwhelmed. So you can start meeting the need way back down here, or even here, instead of here where it's overwhelming. In each of these, like starting with overwhelm, because there's nobody in this video, I mean, on the Zoom meeting right now, that doesn't feel overwhelmed at times. We do. And the way I work with it, if I do get to that place, is what feeling? What is really the feeling? What am I feeling overwhelmed? Not why am I feeling overwhelmed, but what is the feeling trying to tell me? And it can help you have a pattern to go back down to equilibrium. But if you're just overwhelmed, you're stuck. Do you
Yeah.
see what,
Yeah.
until it passes and you still
Right.
learn anything from it?
Right. I think I do end up learning something about it, after I am like maybe out of the situation, out of that environment or whatever, and I start, using tools, you know.
Right,
Um,
right.
but it's in the moment that it's almost like, a little bit of like a panic type feeling or something. And that's like I said, we're not going to solve that for me right now. But yeah,
Oh,
thank you for sharing. And I do appreciate what you're saying about try to think about the overwhelming feeling,
feeling part
not
of.
necessarily. I mean, just the fact that I'm overwhelmed. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, it's just a beginning,
Yeah,
for you, Cindy, but it's a beginning.
yeah,
And the other thing about it is we go to why are we feeling overwhelmed? Don't go to the why, because then you're just gonna keep, I don't, that could go forever, the why, but more about what do I need right now with this overwhelming feeling? What do I need right now? It's a very different question and process. Does that make sense, you guys?
Yeah, I want to comment on that, Janice, because I
Yeah.
find that if I'm overwhelmed and I start asking why, it kind of takes me down a road of like shaming myself. Like, why don't I know my feelings? Why don't I do that? I'm 52 years
Right.
old, blah, 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 and that's not helpful to the overwhelm. So I appreciate you saying that. Don't worry, don't think about the why, but over time too, I've also learned to just be a lot more patient with myself. Like, it's okay. It's okay that I need to take a minute or more than a minute to figure out what my feelings are. It's a lifetime of the, training to dismiss my own feelings, you know? So just giving myself some grace, I guess, and patience.
Yeah, and use the feeling. I'll send it out, put
Mhm.
it on, where you guys can, it's an amazing feeling chart.
Mhm.
It's the best I've ever seen. And at the bottom, it talks about body sensations as well. So let's say you're in overwhelm, have it on your phone, look, pull it out. It may help, check out in the morning, look at the feeling chart often so you can expand instead of, I feel sad, I feel happy. Oh, okay, that's so much between that.
Yeah, I would like that chart because I've like noticed kind of like similarity. Like I do try to check in and see like what I'm feeling,
Right?
but where I'm and like I have been able to like connect more with my body and the body sensations, but where I'm having the challenge is when I'm checking in, I could literally feel my body like going into that like it's not safe mode and like shutting down. So then I'm like struggling figuring out the feelings. So I think that chart would really help.
Yeah, it's a great chart. And if you
Yeah.
utilize it, like put it on your phone, have it next to your bed, have it wherever, but utilize it so you start training yourself to experience a multitude and know more um, profoundly what you're feeling instead of just the over top ones. Anger. Well, what's under anger? There's a lot of things under anger, and sometimes it's just anger. But Michelle, you were going to say something. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I just wanted to, Liz put this in the text. We ridicule, denial, and science. Oh, I can't talk. Silence our own perceptions in order to adapt and survive. And she mentioned it a little bit. I mean, this is like we were designed to adapt and survive. We weren't built or created with all of this chaos in the world. The first, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. Anyways, when we were just young human beings on this planet, um, we had to save ourselves. And so it's a completely natural reaction to try to survive. And that's like our first innate response to pretty much anything until you can realize that not everything is a survival mode. But if that's the way you've been raised and you've wired all of this into everything's into survival mode, you know, stay out of the way, don't be seen, don't be heard, don't, you know, be nice to everybody. It's like it takes a long time for those patterns to start to learn that you don't have to always go to I'm not safe, but give yourself some grace, because that's the way we're wired for years, you know, or way back then or whatever, you know, is to keep ourselves safe. And I think in general, that's all we're trying to do. We just need to find, I shouldn't say, I just need to find the ways that keep me safe. And I heard something like, it was like, there's this big juice, big fat lion, right? And this dog comes up and starts barking at him. And the lion doesn't even move because he knows who he is. He's not even afraid of the dog. And the dog's just barking. That made a lot of sense to me because the lion stands in his truth, right?
I like that, Michelle. It's like we were hardwired growing up to not experience our feelings, and we were taught that to survive. It became not just coping skills, but survival mechanisms for sure. And what happens, which is the critical part, our survival mechanisms no longer serve us, they become destructive. So they have to be observed and shifted because what used to be survival now is destructive. And it has to be modified and it has to be honored and shifted. It just does because
Yeah.
it's self-destructive now. And it's the weirdest thing. What was survival becomes detrimental, you know, if we're not really careful. But thank you for sharing that. I absolutely believe that that's how we survived, is through closing down, you know, to our feelings, to our body, to our experiences.
Thank you, Michelle. That was really helpful.
Oh, good. Yeah, thanks. I listen to a lot of stuff, so it's not just me.
And I shared the feelings list in the chat.
Oh, nice.
It
Thank you.
has the body sensations on the bottom. I think that's the one you were talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's a good one.
Mhm. It's a really good one.
Yeah.
Um, can they download it? I don't know what
Oh,
happened.
yeah. Mhm. Yep. Yeah, Kate, you can see it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just look at it for a minute. And here's something I want to share because it's really important too, is you can look at that list right now and you will have at least a handful, if not more, feelings going on right now. You would look at that list and you will pick more than one. You will not just pick one, most likely. You know, because that's the truth about us. We have a multitude of things going on, and our feelings are guiding us all the time. It's not like I only feel this right now. You can feel an abundance of things, and they're all important. Does that make sense? Because a lot of times we're overwhelmed because we have so many feelings and we don't know how to manage them, right? So what do you think of that chart? It's a good one, right?
Yeah, I like the wheel too, or whatever those like we had it
Right.
IoT and everything, the wheel. That one helped me too. But I like this Hoffman one that you shared. And I just actually can I just searched for nervous because for some reason I've got this nervous thing going on. Maybe because of
Right.
this meeting, I don't know. And it's in the top feeling or emotion is fear. So I guess I must be scared.
Yes.
Anyway, I'm playing with it a little bit and I'm like, okay, so what's that in my body sensation? I'm like, oh, just maybe a little and so
Yes.
where is that? I'm in the process of looking at it, but vibrating, I guess, because that one is in there. So yeah, I gotta tap into. But the one thing I would like to see is like if the body sensations could tie back to a certain emotion. But I guess maybe you're talking about it, Janice. So it doesn't necessarily. You could have any body sensation,
Yes.
and it's kind of. It could be for any feeling. It could be a happy or a sad or a fear.
Right.
Or, okay.
Right.
Okay.
And
So yeah.
that's a good question, Kate, because my body sensations help me know what I feel, because I feel that first. My body feels it, and then I use my mind, not my thoughts,
Mhm.
to like assimilate and understand it more clearly. Because what we're talking about is complex. Can you guys see that? If it was easy, but it isn't easy.
Yeah, I thought you were going to give us the answers during the Zoom sessions, Janice. This is how it is. This is what you got to do. No?
Well, I wish it was that easy, because then we don't even have to be here. We'd all just go off into life and have joy. But it's at least having this conversation, we have an understanding of what is the challenge and what we need to focus on, right? I mean, it's like you will get, I promise, if you do this work, you will get to a place when you have a body sensation or a feeling comes up, you'll know how to take care of it. You will. You won't go to overwhelm immediately. You won't. And that's the the work, right? Do you see that? That's like peace and freedom to be able to say, whew, I don't have to go to overwhelm every time. I can catch it way before it gets to overwhelm. That's what I'd like you guys to have the gift of. And sometimes you're going to go to overwhelm, but you don't have to. You can stay regulated by knowing what you need. And that's, I mean, do you guys know what you need besides food and water? I mean, to me, that's what feelings do. They help me know what I need. Like, because, well, we could go on and on about this because I think this reading is pretty rich and has a lot more to it than just tonight's conversation.
Yeah, we didn't even really get to the second half
I
of the
know.
reading. Yeah.
I think this first half is good just to get some kind of a framework about feelings at first.
Mhm.
And we can go into the second part of the reading maybe next week. I think that would be helpful. If you
Mhm.
guys are open to that, thumbs up.
Is
Yeah. Has this at least given you a framework, like a little inkling of what feelings are and how to start honoring them? And I think that sheet, I like it actually better than the feeling wheel, just because I like things more organized like that personally. And I like the body sensation one. I think that's a really helpful one.
I think it would be good. I'd like to talk about the second part next week because this, what we're talking about tonight, like really, for me anyway, leads logically to the second part of the reading,
Yeah.
which is people pleasing, how we get from learning to minimize our own feelings to the point where we don't know what they are or we can't recognize them to people pleasing and codependency.
Right.
So I'd like to talk about that next week.
Yeah, I do too, because it's a good reading. And tonight we got the foundation set. to go for
Mhm.
next week. How's that? You guys ready? All right. Well, thank you guys for coming. And I'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Bye.